Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. Presented by the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance and sponsored by Pandium, an integration platform and marketplace for ecosystems. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks for listening in. My name is Liz Garcia. I'm the community manager of the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance, and I'm on the marketing team at Pandium. Today, I'm speaking with Caitlin Teed, who is a partnerships manager at Ryder Ecommerce. Thanks for taking the time, Caitlin. Can you tell our audience a little bit about Ryder and your background in technology partnerships?
Thank you so much for having me, Liz. I'm so excited. My name is Caitlin Teed. I am a integration partner manager at the Ryder Ecommerce by Whiplash team. Big sentence, but we do a lot of really big and great things here. We are a third-party logistics provider for enterprise and fast-growing e-commerce brands. I've been in the e-commerce space for some time and in the SaaS space for even longer. So yeah, what we do at Ryder is we're a warehouse and fulfillment company for brands with over 24 omni-channel facilities across the US and expanding globally as well. Yeah, I mean, where do we even start, Liz? Do you want me to go back to the beginning? I can tell you a little bit about what brought me here today, if that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely the roles that you feel really really inspire your work, your current work in technology partnerships, and really got you to where you are now.
Yeah, of course. Well, I thought I was going to be a journalist, but then I fell in love with tech. And I've always loved troubleshooting and creative exploration. And I found myself at companies like Apple and at Shopify. And it's at Shopify where I really first also fell in love with the idea of partnerships and how companies can come together and build really beautiful and creative technologies and storytelling through that, and how we can build really innovative things like those building blocks, I think about Legos and we have this masterpiece in mind, but how do we get there together? So while a large volume of my history has been in also strategic and agency partnerships, I find I'm really interested and focused on that marriage of product and strategy. So when you see, I mean, it happens so often in our daily lives, I think we sometimes forget about it. Like when Uber partners with a loyalty program, or when Starbucks partners with your credit card, these kind of things that help build that story better together. But I like doing that at the technical side, and even being on the warehousing and fulfillment side, it's the nitty gritty of physically shipping and fulfilling things, and how our technology and our warehouse management system plays into that. So that's the long and the short of it, Liz. I know I've talked forever.
No, yeah, that was great. I definitely agree. While I don't work specifically in technology partnerships, I've talked to a lot of people working within them, and that's definitely a piece that I find the most interesting too. That those joint use cases, the building the story together to solve problems is super cool to learn about. I don't think you mentioned, but I know when we spoke personally, you said that you had a lot of experience also in client services and customer success before your role now, which is really focusing on more managing integration partnerships. Yeah. I'd love to hear, for anyone who might be transitioning from a similar role or similar roles, yeah, and is thinking of transitioning into technology partnerships, just skills that you brought to the table from those previous roles that you feel like you really were able to play up and helped you be successful in interviews and the role, and also skills that you personally had to learn to develop along the way.
Oh gosh, great questions. Yeah, remember we talked about this a lot, and I've seen other episodes of this podcast, and I've loved hearing Chris Law's story from Gorgeous about the different types of skill sets you look for. And when I think about someone in this kind of partnerships, product type of arts and science role, it is really a huge, robust number of hats you can and should wear. And I think, wanting to be a journalist, I think helped build that curiosity in me. And I think anyone, even in a partnerships position, whether you're on the technology side or just looking strategically, you have to have that curiosity. You have to be able to ask the questions of hey, what if we like you can't just be someone who like, oh, we've done it this way in the past. This is how we do it. Partnerships in itself is a very young junior craft. You have to be excited about new opportunities and thinking about things from different perspectives and creatively pulling things apart. And like that, so that's a skill set that I think most people kind of need to have like in their heart and like in something that they're passionate about. So if that's not something you have in your toolbox, it's curiosity is a hard thing to teach. But I would challenge you to think about if partnerships and if like being in tech relationships is something that's interesting to you, you do have to think about the types of questions that you can ask. And no questions are dumb questions. Just people always say, oh, this might be a dumb question. I'm like, never say that. Like every question's a good question, because clearly there's something that's not being explained well, if maybe if these things are coming up, or you just coming from a place of curiosity is one of the most beautiful things. And I think one thing I've learned in the past is like just the relationships that you can build are so key and so important, and building that trust and reliance between yourself and a potential like a partnered company that you're working with. The types of integrations you build trust with you and your customers when you say you can do something and you actually fulfill on that, versus if you build a reputation of not being able to do that. That can be really painful, and you can get a really bad reputation in the industry for over promising and under delivering. So even when I was at Shopify, I would always get anxious about our product announcements, because it's that, again, that marriage of like the art and the science of it. So it's like the marketing speak is like, we do this. And then it's like, but what do we actually do? Like, what is the chemistry and the science behind it? So being able to build those relationships that have that trust, because what you're doing, what you're saying you do actually reflects what you can do. And also like that, marrying that curiosity into it, being able to speak tech as a non-tech person is something I'm always learning. And it's something that I've had to learn. And I always say, like, I know just enough to be dangerous, just enough to speak at like a fourth grader level, like high enough to be like, this thing connects to this thing and it produces this thing. Like, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. But that comes from like, yeah, asking the intentional questions and being curious about things. And that's, I think, where I fell more into the integration and tech and product like partner side of things. And that's where I've really loved to be. And I think the one other tiny thing I will toss in here that I learned at Apple when I was working retail and trying to help 80-year-old grandmothers set up their iPads is patience. It's about having the enough patience to understand that technology was never worked the way you think it will sometimes. Like, you got to be patient, you got to be understanding, and you got to be open to the feedback, as well as open to taking the time to process things. So there's a lot of patience in partnerships, and a lot of patience in any relationship building role, and anything you're learning kind of from the ground up. So yeah,
No,
that's
that was
that.
no, that was great answers. Actually, just as a follow-up, I'm interested. I know you said it's really important that you're curious, and I guess my question is, curious in what way when it comes to technology partnership?
Mm. For me, the curiosity comes from that problem solving perspective, right? So for me, like I typically try to start at the customer level, and I think like okay, what are the biggest problems or challenges that they're trying to solve? And like I think it's one of those things where people like are asking for one thing, and it's like, is that what they need, like want, or what do they really need? So it's that's where I think the curiosity comes from, is dissecting these problems. And that's where technology comes in, because you have to be not only curious about how you dissect that problem to solve it for them, but curious about outwardly, like what are the technologies and what are the new things out there that we can leverage to help solve this problem that might not be the same thing we've used in the past. But it's a curiosity of like, there's that research component, right? That's why like where my journalism background comes in. I love being on top of things and trying to understand like, okay, like this is the platform or the integration we've always leveraged, but like, is it the best one, or is there other things that we could like be playing with? And so I think the curiosity comes both intrinsically from understanding your customer's problem and dissecting that, but also understanding what the technology is out there, and helping yourself stay curious with, like asking questions like, hey, like, what what technology are you leveraging most? Like, TikTok came out of nowhere. I'm like, that's a random social platform, but still, like, we weren't thinking about that like 5, 6, 7 years ago, or maybe we were, and I just wasn't thinking about it, but now we are. So yeah, that's where I think curiosity comes in all kinds of forms.
No, yeah, that makes sense. And then you said something about knowing just enough to be dangerous. I'm curious, what like who or what were your resources in trying to build up the skills, and maybe if you could speak to like some
Yeah.
of the specific areas where you felt like you needed to know just enough to be dangerous.
I remember the first time I heard the word API, and I was like, oh, great, another acronym in e-commerce. This is exactly what we need. Not understanding the core functionalities of something that is such a connecting piece for so many things, and I think is misunderstood in so many ways too, that even I I think, yeah, enough to be dangerous is enough to say, hey, like, I'm curious enough to ask the right questions and know where to go for the resources if I don't understand something. And I did lean heavily on there's a lot of folks in roles that are kind of like that developer evangelist role, or that like developer relationship role. And I really lean on those people at any company that I'm in to be like, hey, how can you explain to me the kind of work you're doing? And they can be a great translator. So I leverage folks in those areas of the business. And I think that I use a lot of like the SaaS ecosystem alliance, like Christina, the CEO of Pandium. I love watching all of her talks in her office hours about and the way that she thinks about things and the way that she explains things. And there's so many great like, tech for dummies resources out there that I constantly have to check in on, just to make sure that I'm still understanding things to my best of my ability. And I think a big part of that too is like knowing enough to be dangerous is like also like being comfortable enough to speak, but also accept feedback, so like saying, hey, like, did I explain that correctly? Did what I say make sense, or am I completely off base? Or they'll be like, yeah, you get it here, but like you wouldn't be able to actually code the thing or like get into the weeds of it, but yeah, you get what we're trying to do here. So I think that translate like friends in your roles that can help you with those translations, and also leveraging resources and in all kinds of communities.
Yeah. And that last point you mentioned, kind of with the theme of just being a lifelong learner and being open to feedback in that way, and not being
Yeah,
afraid to say the wrong thing because everyone's learning here. Um, to kind of
exactly.
Yeah, and to kind of transition into your day to day, I know you mentioned kind of briefly getting feedback and learning more from customers to try to get at the root
Yeah.
cause of things that they need. How do you go about partner prospecting and identifying and reaching out to potential partners?
That's such a great question. It's so funny when people ask, "What's your day to day?" I'm like, "Every day is different." Like, it's just, and I think even when you ask about partner prospecting, I was like, "Oh, like it's so reactive right now." Because sometimes when you just get in the weeds on some things, and you're the role I've been in for 6 months now, and I think I'm coming in to try and build a bit of that foundation. So it's good to sometimes just take stock of where you are with like, for us, like it's a lot of integration rollouts, and that takes some time, and that's a lot of just reactively listening to things that customers want. And in the past, I think our company, we've done a really good job of catering to like our enterprise customer needs when they were when they were like when there were fewer enterprise customers, and when there was like a very obvious need we had to solve. And now we're trying to build more for the foundation and for more customers. So we're doing some amazing surveys, and I'm leaning heavily on our sales teams as well as our customer success teams to say, hey, what comes up most frequently for you? What are your blockers? And that's, I think, where the prospecting comes in, is like, what gaps are we not filling with our current directory of partners and integrations? What do you see is coming up? It is asking those questions and staying curious. And that's a lot of my, if I have the proactive brain in my day to day to do that, and message in the channels, or maybe try to hop on a few sales calls or offer some consultative calls with our customers. But we're very fortunate to have a lot of amazing existing relationships with partners that also require a lot of attention, and just a lot of like focus on, hey, how can we do a better job of telling this story to customers of ours that could be leveraging either of our solutions better, or even just introduce them to that. So one really good example that actually came out this year was our customers had a desire for some EDI providers, electronic data interchange. And this is something where I'm, again, always being curious, because the world of 3PLs and third-party logistics fulfillment is very new to me, but e-commerce isn't. So when I think about, oh, someone gets the call from Nordstrom's, it's as easy as just, oh, just go send like 1,000 skirts to Nordstrom's or whatever. I feel like you're in Devil Wears Prada and they're like, send me 1,000 skirts kind of thing. You just make it happen. But then you get into the weeds of it and you're like, no, there's this technology that's existed since like the dawn of retails, and like the Macy's and the Nordstrom's of the world need you to be compatible with that in order to send to their warehouses, to their fulfillment centers. So, and we were having a lot of customers come to us saying, hey, we would really love a recommendation of an EDI provider, because like we're not happy with the one we have, or like it's just we're just getting into this space and we'd love a good recommendation. So we started building a relationship with an EDI provider, and we started building an integrationship with them, and we've been able to send them like a bunch of business and working closely on our relationship. And so that's been great. And that's been something that came out reactively as like our customers raising their hand and being like, hey, help, like we want you to come in and help solve a big problem, a big pain point of ours. So that's been a really cool win for us this year.
So it's really right now, like based on volume of customer requests. Is there anything else? I mean, I'm sure there is, but like, is there what else goes into kind of, I guess, narrowing down who you invest in? Is it mostly based on customer uh, like the volume of customer requests?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's like kind of partner prospecting 101. Like when we look at a new partnership, or we look at reassessing a current partner, we have actually like a health card score that we use. And that's been really helpful. And I can share that with the folks listening in after as well. We have a template we use, but that's been really helpful, more at that strategic level of like who we want to partner with. And then it gets a little bit nittier grittier on the integration level, where we look into like, how easy is it going to be to integrate with this platform? Do they have API documentation? Do they have like gated access to priority dev support? Like what kind of like partner opportunities do they offer there? But which can be big blockers if a company doesn't have an open API or doesn't have a lot of these foundational things you need. But when we look at not just the customer requests, because that even goes back to the whole, like, are they asking for, do they really need it, or is this a want? And then, so we really do get into like, is this other partner someone who we see a lot of mutual prospecting with? So we use a tool called Crossbeam. And we're able to connect with a lot of our prospective partners or even current partners with that. And we can see, hey, I think it's like some of our partners, we have like over 100 mutual prospects with. That's a huge opportunity there to say like, hey, we have the same customer we're going after. Maybe an integration or some kind of like case study we could build with, like, maybe we don't have a lot of existing customers, but we could like build a case study or build some kind of use case that would be really beneficial for those other 100 people that we're reaching out to say, hey, did you know that like by leveraging this integration, this one of our mutual customers was able to like increase their sales by 10 times, like, or they were able to see like more revenue or whatever the mutual value proposition is. And for us, we're trying to help our customers make as many sales as possible. We do not want stale inventory. We want it out. We want it to be out in the world. No one wants to be charging people for like wasted space in a warehouse. Like, we want our customers to be selling. So any products that help with that from a strategic perspective, and if we're aligned on the same customer, it just makes total sense. The stars align.
Yeah, and I know like that account mapping piece is part of the health score that you mentioned before,
Yeah.
just like having that potential of prospects. Can you speak more to the health score for, I get, your current partners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we do the health scoring. It's quite a very cool, intricate document that my colleague Bree built out actually. And it goes line by line. Think of it like like a report card you'd get in school. Like, it's literally like a report card. But yeah, some of the other like categories in the rubric essentially is like the account mapping. So again, yeah, how many mutual prospects, how many mutual customers, what's a mutual overlap look like? the joint value proposition. So what is our better together messaging? That does, lead into that account mapping is like, okay, so what's the story we tell here together? Like, why are people coming to us as a solution together? Whether it's just, hey, both of these technologies work well together versus both of these technologies actually integrate and help solve major business pain points for you. And then for another one on our health card is relationship. So that kind of, again, boils down to being able to be responsive and having a partner that actually is not just one way directional, but is bi-directional, and that they're able to reciprocate. And if we offer them a chapter in our ebook, that they're going to be able to provide some resources for that. Sales and customer success enablement. Do they offer us the opportunity for lunch and learns with their sales team? Like, how often do we get them in to speak to our team? Content is another huge category. So that's ensuring we have foundational content like mutual one-pagers. Do we have case studies? Do we have things that make it like a no-brainer for the sales team to be able to recommend this solution? And as well as marketing. So like, are we going to the same conferences? Are we able to do some fun like webinars or podcasts together? Like, what are all those different touch points? Are we able to really embed ourselves into, and how do we tell that story together? So that's some of the amazing little lines we have in there.
That's a really great resource and breakdown, and we'll include that in our podcast notes and also on our blog. Thank you for sharing that
Perfect.
again. I'm interested if are they all weighted equally, or are there more, or are there
Mm.
certain things that are weighted more than others, or does that kind of change based on the partnership? I'm interested in hearing a little bit about that.
That's such a good question. And yeah, that was one of the most complicated parts of it all, because it feels like it can sometimes be easy to just build your checklist, but then it is like some of these things are heavier than others. So I think it's the relationship is one of the heaviest weighted. And beyond that is it's also sales and CS enablement. There's a couple smaller categories as well. Like, do we have a legal contract? Like, do we have a revenue share plan? Like those are weighted a little less, because for us, that's just more of that like operational onboarding in the weeds stuff. For me, I also have in mind, because it's more of an integration and technical partner focused, I have like, do they have an open API? Like there's a lot of, and those pieces are worth quite a lot. I think it's like in the 10% of the total score. And yeah, but definitely relationship, I think, is the highest. And I don't think people necessarily understand the importance of that and that relationship at the end of the day could also just boil down to responsiveness. Like, it doesn't have to be someone who's your best friend. Like, I do like building strong relationships with all of our partners and our integration folks, but it just means being responsive. So even if you don't have the answer right away, just being able to say, hey, no, I hear you, like we're going to get back to you, or like, yep, like I'm still interested in doing business, but it might, just, it's transparency at the end of the day too. Building that trust battery comes over time, but it also just comes from consistency. So relationships, definitely, I think it's worth like 20% of our total score. It's quite hefty.
Oh, wow. And you kind of beat me to it. I was going to ask you what would it take for someone or for a partner to get a really high relationship score? But you can. I'm interested if you could share like what would get a partner a really high score on sales CS enablement. I know you mentioned some examples
Mhm.
like, but if you could just speak a little bit more to it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So yeah, I mentioned like kind of like the lunch and learns. One thing we try to do internally as well is like a little bit, we call it like micro content. So we'll do like, it could be just as simple as like a one liner, like, hey, like, did you know that like this mutual customer, like we recommended this customer to loop returns, and, every like 40% of the returns that they process actually become exchanges, which is great for our business because it's like, again, more inventory moving, the customer maintains that revenue, and Loop is able to provide them with some great statistics with their technology and with the flow that they have. So it's little things like that where we just try to like keep certain channels internally active. It could be us being asked to join a sales call and being able to make some recommendations of integrations. It could be us, pulling some data and information about how often an integration or a partner comes up in a sales conversation from like a Salesforce instance or whatnot. There's a lot of lot of things we try to do from like a micro level. And it's even like short little videos we create, or like I've been doing like little trading cards that I've been joking around with, where I'm like, hey, look at like little Pokemon cards, or I'm like, hey, look at this customer, and then level it up with this partner. And look, you get like a bonus round. So fun, I think things, trying to keep it like fun and lighthearted, but also keeping it educational, and experiment with it. Nothing's gonna, and it's consistency. So it's like, not everything's gonna work for everyone, and not everything's gonna work all the time. So try different things.
Yeah, those are great ideas. I love the Pokemon example. That's super cute.
Thank you. I like that
To
one too.
I guess talk a little bit more about like those partner relationships. Like what are your partner manager KPIs, and then how do you align those and decide and create metrics with your partners?
It's a really good question. I mean, some of my KPIs and metrics with my partners are as simple as like, hey, we noticed that we scored low on the marketing category. Like once a quarter, we acknowledge that we're going to do some kind of something together. Either that's together, or that's like a blog swap, or it's like something, we're going to attend this event and we're going to both sponsor this happy hour together. So they could be a simple KPI, like that would be like a mutual KPI between us and a partner individually. But if we pull it back and just go into like my KPIs as a partner manager, we track 5 different assets. We track the leads that we send to partners, so just the sheer number of leads we send, net new customers and the value that has been sourced by partners. So when a partner sends us a lead, what's the value of that deal in our pipeline, and then if it closes. Influenced revenue. So this is a really cool one, which we're trying to track. So maybe the lead wasn't net new from a partner, it wasn't a direct first time intro connection, but we found out like through the sales cycle, like the sales rep says like, hey, like, this customer, they're a big user of Loop, and like they love Loop's product. Would you like, do you think they'd be interested in giving us an endorsement? And we have a great relationship with them. So I'd be like, hey, do you guys mind like, just letting them know we have an integration and that we have a good relationship, and that it wouldn't be any headaches to like get them set up, with the system that you have. And so those kind of things are really beneficial in a lot of partnership conversations. And then we have number 4, expansion revenue. So these are when we have an existing customer that we refer a partner to. So that's a kind of example we use in some microdosing content, like, hey, we referred Loop, and then this customer saw a huge spike in their exchanges instead of having return volume. So we're trying to track like an actual dollar value, and that we can equate to a lot of these, when we introduce a partner, how the success of that customer changes. And then the last one being the health score, which is encompassing kind of like all of that plus more. There's a lot of different ways we tackle this. And I mean, there's no perfect formula. And I think this is going to be a really cool learning year for us on how a lot of these things plan out, because we're just setting a lot of foundation here. But yeah, that's kind of how, from a partner manager perspective, we track our KPIs. And it's not going to work for everyone either. Like we have very long sales cycles with very like big accounts. So like for us, it's not like we're receiving like 10 leads from a partner a week. Like it's a little less, and it's a little more at the same time. So that's just how it works for us. And then, yeah, for each partner individually, we have a mutual success plan template as well that my lead Marco created. I can also share that in the notes if people want to take a look through that, because it's a really cool resource to just get a good pull of like everything from like the foundation of a partnership, like what we kind of talked about, like prospecting, to all the way to like launching an official partnership with someone, that public marketing presence, and trying to get some adoption of whether it be an integration or some kind of lead sharing through that. So yeah, that's the long and the short of it, Liz.
Yeah. No, that was great. And I'm assuming with the health score, it's like trying to have an average of some sort with you, like having an average health score with your partners. Like if I don't
Yes.
know, I'm just
Yeah.
guessing here.
So it's like a score out of 100. And then again, each of those categories are weighted differently. And so we have like kind of like a strong partner status, which is 75 to 100. And then we have like a stable partner status. No, yeah. And then a stable partner status, which is like about, I think it's like 60 to 75 or 50 to 75. And then 50 and below is like a developing partner status. So, and a lot of folks that you just start building a relationship with tend to score 50 and below. Unless like there's another category in the health audit health score that I didn't necessarily bring up, but was um, position in the market. So for example, like some partners that we might be like very interested in working with that maybe are like huge in the space and don't have a lot of time necessarily for you or for whatever your company is, like depends on your lever, right? But for them, they score fairly high in that category. And being able to partner with someone who has a huge presence and like authority in the market is a really high score there. So yeah, we keep our eyes out for those things. And that could be, you could have a developing partner that still scores fairly high, just because that category hits it.
And would you say, what in an ideal world, when like would you say, how often would these health scores be like off? Yeah, in an ideal world, how often would these health scores?
An ideal world, Liz, an ideal world. I mean, it took me so long to do them all this first time. We're gonna try and do them quarterly. Check back with me in 3 months and I'll let you know if I got through all of them.
Okay.
But I definitely think at least 2 times a year they should be done, kind of that H1, H2. I think that's a really, in like every like 6 months or so, it's a really good time to do that kind of like reset and just say, hey, are these the folks that still, because so much can happen, and we're about to head into a year of goodness knows what. I feel like we're all like planning for certainly uncertain times. So I think it's good to do these resets every once in a while, but also it's good to hold yourself accountable to multiple different categories and multiple different metrics, because it's when I first started as a partner manager, my only metric was MRR. And the highest MRR week I had was when I was on vacation. And it didn't make sense to me, because when you just look at something so one way, it's not. And partnerships is a conglomeration of so many things. So yeah, to answer your story, your question with a story, yeah, try to do it 2 times a year.
Perfect. And you actually set me up perfectly for my last question, which is, what are you as an integration partner manager prioritizing going into 2023?
Oh, that's such a good question. What did I think for this? Okay, foundations. I'm also a spin instructor by night, and I always tell anyone in the class, I'm like, you have to have a solid foundation before you get out of that saddle. Like you're gonna have a bumpy ride if you are not taking off on a good runway there. So we're building a lot of runway along with a roadmap for next year, and I love this part of it, because it's looking into the future, and it's thinking strategically and just taking the best practices that we've learned thus far and really just putting that into actual process and practice. So foundationally, I'm doing a lot there, which is exciting, because I think that's going to help make it easier for us to launch and work with more prospective partners in the future. And we're planning on launching a integration marketplace, which we're super excited about. And yeah, building a lot more like, yeah, processes and things for future integrations. And I like to keep things organized, but I'm not like a process for the sake of process girl. So I understand that, things happen and things change, but I'm looking forward to taking the things I learned over the last 6 months and kind of putting them to action. Yeah.
Amazing. This was great. Thank you, Caitlin, for taking the time. Is there anywhere that our
Nice.
audience can connect with you?
Yeah.
LinkedIn, etc.
Come
Yeah.
find me on LinkedIn. I'm also in the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance Slack channel. I'm not super active in there, so apologies if I don't get back to you, but definitely check me out on LinkedIn. I think I'm still on Twitter, if that's still a platform people are using. Apologies if not. But yeah, I'll be around there. So I look forward to chatting. Hit me up with any questions or ideas.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.